Now, a recap of our top story. Once again, a series of attacks has rocked India's biggest city, Mumbai. At least 81 people are now reported to have died and many more have been injured. Gunmen are holding hostages, many of them foreigners, in one of Mumbai's best-known hotels. A little-known group calling itself the Deccan Mujahideen has claimed responsibility. Joining me now is Marc Gopin, the Director of Religion, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University's Institute for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. And we were just saying there a moment ago that the Deccan Mujahideen have claimed responsibility. An obscure organization no one seems to have heard from. Doesn't necessarily mean that they carried out this attack.
No, they may not even exist, and it's very common for them to use misleading names in order to divert attention from where their real sources of support are from.
But judging from the targets in these attacks, we have hotels where a lot of foreigners obviously stay, restaurants frequented by many tourists, train stations as well. It doesn't point to this being of sectarian nature, does it?
No, not at all. And in fact, Bombay, as the financial center of India, also points to previous global attacks that focused on the symbols of Western modernization.
Why is it being targeted again, though?
Well, I think that this has obviously been months or years in planning, and this is an opportunity emerging in terms of India's role in the world. India has become more and more important in the world, and it may be seen as a high-value target, a symbolic event. Remember, international terrorism loves great symbols of Western modernization, and India is becoming that.
And there have been many attacks in previous months in Delhi, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Ahmedabad and other cities, but does this one point to the same culprits because of the scale and also the level of coordination involved?
Exactly, the scale, the coordination, the nature of the targets. It's unprecedented for it to be British and Americans and foreign targets. So I think that this doesn't smack of the tensions between India and Pakistan or between Muslims and Hindus.
Who's the most obvious suspect again? I mean, could it be the Indian Mujahideen, regardless of this claim of responsibility? And what do you make of the fact that the anti-terror official of the city was actually killed in this attack?
Well, we don't know yet, according to your reports, whether it was a deliberate targeting or we happened to be in the crossfire, but I really think that all of this points to a much more sophisticated level of international terrorism.
There have been growing tensions between, obviously, the Hindus and Muslims. What do you think the effects of this latest attack will be? Well,
I think international terrorism likes to create those kind of tensions, and we don't know what India is going to look like as it wakes up this morning. This is a very, very terrible attack, and it's going to depend also on parliamentary leaders and how they react, and also what our reaction is going to be in the United States.
I was just about to ask you, India, a close ally of the United States. Obama has issued a statement calling for a coordinated global response, different to what the White House has suggested.
Well, I'm not going to emphasize the differences as much to say that this fits with Obama's vision, which is focused on global coordination, and I think that's the best and most important response to this, as opposed to dividing between civilizations or nations.
And just briefly in 30 seconds, this doesn't look like it is the end of this wave of attacks that has rocked many cities in India, does it?
No, I think that this is going to stir even more tension, and unless there's an intervention to have greater coordination on the Indian subcontinent of anti-terrorism, it's going to continue.
Marc Gopin, thank you very much for your time.
Joining us now, Marc Gopin, Director of Religion, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University's Institute for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. Who benefits from this attack? Who is waking up this morning in Mumbai and is in a better position than they were 24 hours ago?
I'm not actually sure that anybody in Mumbai is in a better position. I think, I honestly think that the greatest benefactors of this are anyone who wants an international incident that provokes and continues a war of civilizations, and I think that that's the greatest victor here. There's nobody in Mumbai who's going to be more comfortable.
All right, so but then who would be trying to, I mean, what sort of picture are you then building up as we get more and more information?
I think my impression is that the quality and the nature of this attack that's so unprecedented and has such a technical skill to it that required probably months or years of planning is that this is yet another incident of international terror with the same kinds of targets, high-value targets, a lot of death at train stations, a financial district, British and Americans seized, a Jewish site attacked. This has all the makings of something that's not indigenous to India.
It's not an extension of what was already a local conflict. That's what Stratfor is saying, another defense and analyst outfit in Austin, Texas.
It'll be easy to verify this because there's a lot of survivors of this attack and there's many people involved. It wasn't just one big mysterious bomb. and we'll know more in a few days. But my inclination is that this is a new front in a vulnerable spot, which is India has the largest, almost the largest Islamic population in the world. It would be a great place to continue a kind of conflict of civilizations, particularly now that maybe America is not going to be as much a part of the war on again between civilizations with the election of Barack Obama.
Well, that's to be seen.
So joining me now is Marc Gopin, Director of Religion, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolution at George Mason University's Institute for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. So looking at the pattern that we've seen in recent years of these attacks that have struck several different Indian cities, do you see a common thread, a common link there?
There's been a thread since 1993 of major attacks periodically. I think that this is a new trajectory, and that there's an underworld, strong suspicion on the ground from the people I'm talking to of underworld involvement, and also some Pakistani involvement. But the level of organization and the focus on British and American hostages suggests to me an international terrorist link here that's quickly, if Americans are involved, is going to ratchet up to something very new.
And the sophistication of these attacks, the fact that they happen in so many different places, what does that suggest?
That suggests to me the fingerprints of Al-Qaeda.
Al-Qaeda?
Yeah, it's the coordinated nature of attacks to be simultaneous, very sophisticated, although it's homegrown because.
But have they been responsible for other attacks in the country? Because the Indian Mujahideen have typically claimed responsibility for many of these attacks.
There is a group called Dukhan Mujahideen that's claiming responsibility, but they're very unknown, and that in itself is suspicious. And also the purposeful use of British and American hostages, to me, suggests something much more international. That is an effort to provoke an international conflict between
on a
India and
religious level,
Pakistan.
I mean, in which direction will fingers be pointing?
Well, this is what's unfortunate, is that it's in Al-Qaeda's interest to create a war of Islam against everyone else, and it's in no one else's interest. And that's what's tragic here, is that this may be an Indian 9/11, where they're going to have to go through a process of asking themselves, is this international crime where the whole Indian subcontinent should get together on fighting this crime, or is this going to be Muslims against everyone else? And the first reaction is going to be extreme anger at Muslims, but I'm hoping that they'll see this for what it is, which is international crime in a very intensive scale.
But there are extremist elements on both sides, both Hindu and Muslims.
Oh, sure.
Are you suggesting that beyond any doubt this must have been carried out by Muslim extremist elements?
Well, every single piece of information from the ground so far is suggesting that, and many emails going in are claiming responsibility. But you don't know yet for sure. But it has those elements, and it's happened several times before.
And an official in the city of Mumbai, we understand now, is saying that the situation is still not under control. Does this attack speak to the deeper interreligious divisions that we've seen between Hindus and Muslims in previous years, or is it more of an isolated event that is carried out by extremist elements on either side of the spectrum?
This isn't isolated. These have been happening periodically over the last 15, 20 years. It goes back a long way, the tension between Muslims and Hindus in India. But I think the level of sophistication and coordination is meant to provoke something that really wasn't expected at this moment in history. I think this was a very hopeful moment, and India has been moving up and up as a country in ratcheting up a new relationship with the rest of the world and also within their population. So this feels to me like it's an outside influence. I have to say that it's not, it's very unfortunate. It's probably going to cause a lot of riots. We're probably going to see some real difficulties in the next coming days.
What do you make of the way the Indian security forces have handled these wave of attacks? Because they have claimed to have caught many of the culprits in previous attacks, but it seems that it is difficult for them to make sure that this type of thing doesn't happen again.
Well, this is interesting in that there's real people shooting with AK-47s all over the city, so they're going to have people to investigate. And this is not like an isolated Bali bombing attack where we don't know who did it. This is a real coordinated terrorist attack within the city, and the truth will emerge. And I hope it's not flavored by angry sentiment from the majority of Parliament that's demanding justice and becoming a Hindu-Muslim conflict. That would be unfortunate.
Do you read anything into the timing of these attacks?
No, I don't see why it would come right now, although there are elections emerging, and there's been previous Al-Qaeda attacks that influenced elections in Spain and other places. So it is a prime target to try and radicalize a country in order to influence international events.
Marc Gopin, Director of the Center on Religion, Diplomacy and Conflict Resolution at George Mason's University, thanks very much for your time.
Just in the last few moments, we've been getting some comments